Fundamentals matter. There's a pretty startling lack of fundamentals out there still. We're doing our level best, but man, it's tough because nobody wants to recognize that their fundamentals are no good. What Bob sort of brought to the table is if your fundamentals are no good, it's a house of cards. It doesn't matter how well you can market. It doesn't matter what else you do. You've got to have fundamentals. Otherwise, you're not going to train your way out of a paper bag.
Today we sit down with Jean Donaldson, one of the most influential voices in dog training education. She made the jump from traditional aversive methods to founding one of the first academies that taught trainers how to truly understand and help companion animals. In this episode, we get the behind-the-scenes story of how the field moved from rote obedience to evidence-based behavior work. We talk about what it really takes to build mechanical skill and why the future of the profession still rests on getting the fundamentals right. If you care about the craft and the science of animal training, this one's for you. So let's dive in. Welcome to Precision Animal Training, where we teach big lessons through the lens of getting precise science-based behavior. I'm Kier like your ear, Kirsten, crawl like a baby Kraljevic, animal trainer, behavior nerd, and your host. This is a show about real, lasting change, the science of precision, the power of pursuing perfect timing, the art of truly seeing and shaping behavior, whether you're working with chickens, dogs, dolphins, parrots, horses, or even ourselves. Expect real stories from the field, timeless principles that transfer across species, and practical insights you can apply immediately. Because if you can train a chicken with clarity, kindness, and razor-sharp precision, you can train almost anything. So grab a notebook. This is your personal masterclass in curiosity, mechanics, and true behavioral understanding. Welcome back to Precision Animal Training. I'm Kirsten Kraljevic, coming to you from the Gulf Coast. And this show exists to hold on to the oral history of modern-day animal training, while the people who built this profession are still here to tell us about themselves. There's plenty of trainers out there today who know the mechanics of positive reinforcement, but we're finding that far fewer know the people who challenged the accepted wisdom and built the education that the rest of us take for granted. So my guest today is one of those people. I'm here with Jean Donaldson. How are you today, Jean?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. And of course, my good friend, Dr. Bob Bailey. How are you, Bob? Ready for another one?
I'm doing okay. Hanging in there.
Excellent. So Jean, she was one of the first people to start an academy for dog trainers. And I remember when I did my first APDT conference, so we're talking early 2000s, I remember hearing her speak and learning about the academy. And I had a choice. There were two choices. I was saving my money. I was like, do I go train chickens because it was so novel and who trains chickens? or do I go work with Jean, who was training out of the SPCA at that point, the San Francisco SPCA. And shelter work was my background. So I spent many nights just thinking about this one, and I just went for the chickens. And I do have regret, Jean, that I didn't pick San Francisco, but I can say that most of my friends did. So when they would come back, they would tell me about what they learned there. And what was so unusual for the time was that you were actually teaching people how to do intakes with owners about the behavior of their animals and really take this serious for the first time. It wasn't like, hey, I'm a dog trainer, I'm going to help you. You were like, wait a minute, hold on, let's take a history, let's find out what's going on, what that we can't see, the internal stuff that's affecting how the training you're trying to do is working. So tell us a little bit of what got you to the point that you said, hey, we need an academy for this.
Oh, wow. So begin at the beginning. So when I first started in dog training, traditional training, so not anything based on the science. People had not studied ABE or been to chicken camp. It was basically traditional dog training that had been passed on from trainer to trainer. So there was a strong emphasis on the use of aversive stimuli. There was a lot of healing. So basically, we inherited the competitive obedience set of exercises. So a lot of healing around the room. So trainers were self-taught or they had been mentored by trainers who had come before. There was no quality control. And so family dog classes were taught by people who had amassed obedience titles in the very constrained specific sport of dog obedience. Their weapon of choice was a leash and some sort of special collar. And as we know, when you're a hammer, everything is a nail. And so leash corrections were how they kind of approached everything. And so I came up through those ranks. Over time, I transitioned from doing primarily dog sports to helping families with their pets. And it emerged pretty quickly that people didn't need healing. They needed the help solving the gamut of behavior problems. So I gradually developed curricula that built the skills to help dogs fit into human society rather than as entry-level competitive obedience prospects.
And when did you first hear about AB and Bob and Marion? At what point in your development did that information impact you?
I had occasionally seen references, so footnotes in textbooks and so on, when people were talking about things like, some of the famous misbehavior of organisms effects that we still teach students that kind of stuff to this day, which is really relevant about how action patterns in animals, if they are triggered, can override even their kind of self-interest in an operant conditioning type of scenario. So I knew about that. And then I had the very good fortune of meeting Marilyn at an APDT conference. So I had met her. And then I'd seen sort of Bob's videos and so on, and then heard about chicken camps, and then finally had Bob come and do a chicken camp for the academy.
How did that go? What was that like?
Earth-shattering. I mean, and one thing that you have to understand is that so at that point, I thought I had it all. Like I thought I knew what I was doing. As many people I think have this experience of going to chicken camp, and you think you really know your stuff. Oh, I'd done this and I did this, and I've got these ribbons on the wall, and blah 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 blah. And then you go to chicken camp, and you find out how good your fundamentals are. You find out what's important. So it was, you don't want to be hyperbolic, but it was for me quite earth-shattering and life-changing. It's why when Bob originally sort of, said, "Hey, do you want to come do this podcast?" I said, "Bob, I would run through a wall for you. I would do anything for this man." Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who I think get a lot of credit and do glamorous stuff in dog training. It really is hard to overestimate the contribution of some of the work that Bob and ABE did. It really is. And I'm not just blowing smoke here. It's critically important.
I mean, I'm going to agree. And that's why I'm here, trying to preserve this history. But wow, Bob, that it sounds better when she says it. That was awesome. So do you remember around what year that was, Bob, that you went to San Francisco and taught that?
It was shortly after Marion died.
Early 2000s?
Yeah, she died in 2001. So it would be somewhere in there. And I remember that Jean was the first person I ever saw train the chicken the way when I'm really training all by myself and I'm shaping the behavior of a chicken. She did the exact same thing that I did. And I've never seen anyone else do that. On one knee with the arm straight back from the table.
Oh, neat.
And what I wondered is if I told her to do that.
No, convergent evolution.
Yeah.
There you go.
If you start off that way, the chicken never gets the idea that it can get to the food. And therefore, after a while, it quits paying attention to you. And so often, as I'm sure you saw most of the trainers there, the chicken is mugging the trainer all the time because the cup is lower. And it really interferes with training. And it's a lesson that people really should learn with dogs because they'll do the same thing.
Yes.
So, anyway, it's just something funny for me to recollect after all these years.
I feel like we should tell a joke about fluency here because he just nailed all his stuff all the way through the workshop. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's great.
I assume I had a great time. Morgan Spector had an absolutely great time. He just loved it out there. So It was a fine trip. Yeah.
So, Jean, after you had him there with the chickens, did you change your curriculum? Did it change how you were teaching people?
Yeah, it did. We had been sort of letting students formulate kind of their own training plans, but after chicken camp, I mean, we migrated pretty quickly towards giving students vetted, standardized plans shortly thereafter. Because when I started, so you have to understand, so at the SPCA, the students who were coming at that time, it was a live program. It was a 6-week live program. People would sort of often joke it was 24/7 because it was pretty high pressure. We issued students a shelter dog every 2 weeks and a long list of behaviors, and we coached their technique and then tested them on outcomes at the end of the 2 weeks on each dog. And each dog trainer team was kind of in a chain link fence area. That chain link area, they each had their own kind of little small area. And they were all in the same room with all the other shelter dogs and all the other dog trainer teams. So there was no way to half-ass it. You had to be technically good. You've got to be technically competent to get those dogs trained. And so we honed training technique. And that's why Bob both technically was so important and his concept of using a well-vetted training plan was so important. And we got into that very heavily shortly after.
That's really neat to hear the impact.
Well, you say you didn't have a plan, but
We did. We let students we were trying to sort of, in kind of a Socratic manner, trying to get students to come up with training plans rather than issuing them the plan. And we decided, you know what, let's be more efficient. There's only so many things that we want companion dogs to do. We know what the optimal plan is. It's been hundreds and thousands of dogs and hundreds of trainers. Issue them the plan and then focus on their actual mechanics, focus on their technique because we were time constrained. So that's what happened.
But what I had seen of what you were doing, what you yourself did, I'll call it training chops, it looked very good to me. And that was one of the reasons why, of course, that I came out there, is that I knew that what I would have to say and teach would not fall on deaf ears.
No, not at all. It is critical, as you say, chops. I mean, critically important. Even sort of with our companion dog trainers now, where there's a huge focus on counseling and then how to curate all this information for owners who are somewhat less intrinsically motivated to become good trainers. They just kind of want it, in pill form as quickly as possible. In a way that makes it doubly important to me that technique is good and that plans are sound, because at the end of the day, it's generally not a professional trainer training the dog. Most of the time, it's owners DIYing it. And so it's a very complex machine doing this. And so knowing, okay, so what is optimal, and then now how is that best translated to the dog owning public, and then all of that stuff, including sort of the curation of ideas for people who were not trainers. Because if I remember correctly, ABE did not recruit from among trainers. They recruited just anybody who said, I would like this job. And your job was to turn those people into competent trainers, even though they were not self-selected as super animal interested or training interested. And so you had to have a method to get quality control among people who were not, these are people who didn't get up in the morning and read dog books. They're people who got up in the morning and they just wanted a job. And you were able to turn those people into competent trainers.
What's very interesting is the people that we got were guys, and most of the time it was guys that got up early in the morning to milk cows. And they were farm boys. They were Arkansas farm boys. And what they had to look forward to was flipping hamburgers, pumping gas, and yard work. And suddenly they had a job. And we had someone called Ray Wiley. He was a Marine, World War II, went completely through the World War II in the Pacific, and tough as nails. And he was our animal care guy. He had a staff, and that guy loved his animals. You could not imagine him being a hardened Marine, but he was. And if you did anything to cause any difficulty with the animals, that you would hear about it. if a person wanted to become a trainer at ABE, they had to serve under Ray Wiley for 6 months to a year. And there they learned how to keep records. Every animal had every one of our thousands of animals had a record every day. Somebody did something with that animal. And anyway, so when we finally accepted them, if they survived Ray Wiley, that's what we recruited from as trainers. It worked pretty well. Our failure rate was not terribly high. We were pretty successful on teaching people to be trainers, and we paid extremely well for Arkansas, very well. So we had no problem keeping people. But I didn't start that, by the way. That was done by the Brelands. I want to emphasize all this, that the Brelands had a going system. Now, there were lots of inefficiencies in the system. And that's where I stepped in. And as somebody from the outside, when I joined in 65, that I remade the company and we became even more efficient. The Brelands were efficient. Don't get me wrong. They were efficient. But there were lots of corner cutting that we could do and lots of ways of implementing even the technology that we were building at the time, because we had a lot of research going on about how to do behaviors, get behaviors faster and faster. So anyway, I just interject that's how we got people, and they were just Arkansas farm boys with high school educations. I think there was only one or two of our trainers ever who had a degree, a college degree. All the rest of them were high school graduates. But they loved their work. They absolutely loved what they were doing because it was easier. It was easier than pumping gas and flipping hamburgers.
They were very lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were lucky.
So 25 years. Your school's been around for 25 years.
Yeah, 27 years now.
27 years. Can you walk us through some of the observations you've had about the students, like how things have changed and where you'd like to see it go from here and what you miss about when you started? Or
what year did it start?
1999.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. It ran for 10 years out of the SPCA, sort of as that residential program, and then took it out and said, you know what, 6 weeks is not enough. And we developed it into sort of a 2-year program so people had more time to marinate, be supervised, do things, more repetition of stuff rather than sort of trying to cram it. And there was no way to do that with a live program. I mean, it's just prohibitive for most people to spend 2 years away from home and so on. So we developed it as an online program and then pioneered sort of coaching people via video upload, which actually turned out to be a good thing because, you send people back a detailed video analysis of their training and saying at 3:57, you did XYZ. This is really good. Do more of this. Da, 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 da. At 4:09, you did this, or notice that this, da, da, da. Give people really super duper detailed feedback. But that question that Bob was talking about, the farm boys, I think they're really onto something. So the idea of how do you develop a competent trainer? It's a question that sort of, I think I'm going to go to my grave sort of trying to hone that. So how to best do it? Some people know this, I'm a baseball stats junkie. And the question they have, and they've got millions of dollars and people with fantastic IQs looking at these questions, which is recognize and develop the talent. Okay. So, is Aaron Judge any good? And what do we mean by good? What do you, define what good means? And how do you then measure that? How do you know if a trainer or a technique that you're going to teach that trainer, how do you know it's any good? And how are we going to define what good means? It sounds simple, but it's actually a very complex question. So if we start with, okay, the idea is we're going to try and keep dogs in their home with a good quality of life and people living successfully with dogs, and then work backwards to develop and mint trainers who are able to sort of accomplish that. So everything from screening applicants into the program. So who's the right person? Who's got the attributes? They don't have to be expert trainers coming in, but they have to have certain attributes. And then what are we going to teach them? How are we going to teach it? And then how are we going to measure whether they've got it, and then they can then fledge and go into the real world and apply it effectively. And that's kind of been my life's work. And it's why we focus so much on cases, why we focus so much on supervised practice after graduation, is to check and balance. Are we achieving the goal? Yes or no? Are we getting there?
We could judge by our income. We could judge by the productivity of the trainers. If we spent so many hours, because remember, guys have time sheets and they have assignments, and they are assigned a certain number of animals. And by the way, that is rotated. Very seldom does an animal start under one person and end under that same person. Usually that they go through 2 or 3 trainers, because our animals were turned over to other people to give the show at the other end. So these animals had to work essentially for anyone. But I guess the real point is that the trainers were able to, let's say, follow instructions and give instructions. They were able to give instructions because they had learned how to accept instruction and change their behavior rapidly. And over a period of time, with the instruction that we gave them, they became very good supervisors of people on the road. Because our trainers would go out and spend 2 weeks with their trainers at the park. And remember, there used to be lots of parks all over the place, not just a few of the giant parks, that we would go out with our trainers and teach them how to give the show and the basics of maintaining behavior, not necessarily of getting behavior, but of maintaining behavior. And it turned out to be a very good way of doing it. And it was something, again, the Brelands had done prior. Well, we were, if not one of the first, we were one of the first $1 million animal training companies. And we were this little company in Hot Springs, Arkansas, in the middle of nowhere. So again, it was a model derived from the Brelands, and it worked very, very well. The trainers were good. Well, I rest it with that we existed for 50 years and it worked. And it was the Breland system that made it work.
Are you an animal trainer ready to sharpen your skills to a legendary level? Or a corporate leader looking for a fresh, powerful way to boost team dynamics, decision-making, and leadership? Discover Kirsten's Chicken Workshops, an immersive 5-day experience rooted in the science-based curated exercises of the legendary Bob and Marion Bailey. Train a live chicken using the principles of operant conditioning, like positive reinforcement. Why chickens? They're fast, honest teachers that instantly reveal where you need to improve your training skills. No fluff, just real results that transfer to dogs, horses, or any species you want to train, and even to leading people more effectively. Trainers call it life-changing. Dr. Bob Bailey himself endorses it as the ultimate mechanical skill builder. So visit Kirsten'sChickenWorkshops.com right now and sign up for the waitlist. Spots fill fast. Train a chicken, change the way you train and lead forever. Head to Kirsten'sChickenWorkshops.com today. Now that you mentioned you're into baseball stats, now I just want to rip up my questions and ask like totally different ones. But so you're keeping...
Oh, are you a baseball person?
No, but I feel like now I'm like, okay, I can go another direction and about stats.
2 years ago, I took up football, like American gridiron football. And I've done a lot of stuff in academia. Yeah. And I can safely say that understanding NFL football it's rocket science. It's so difficult.
More than picking dog trainers?
I think, oh my God, it's so complicated.
Do tell, like why? Why did you say that?
That it's difficult, or why is it difficult?
Why do you find it difficult?
Maybe because I came to it late in life and I wasn't sort of, I didn't sort of, do it my whole life. And so, I'm sort of, breaking up concrete in my mind a little bit, but also it is inherently difficult. The whole idea of, okay, we want to, accomplish this goal, but the other team's trying to, at the same time, stop you from doing it with these sort of freaks of nature and a bunch of pads. And how to get this ball 10 yards, like, oh, it's like modern warfare, and they have these playbooks that are like this thick,
But
and then the defense is trying to, figure out what they're going to do, and everybody's trying to fool each other. There's a lot of gamesmanship going on, and it's nuts. I mean, it's my latest sort of thing that I'm sort of trying to study, and it's so hard.
that is so cool. So now I see you as the stats and probability person.
Yeah, but I mean, baseball. Yeah, I've got my head around baseball. So I've started baseball much earlier, and I have kind of, I'm an amateur, but I have some understanding of player evaluation in baseball. In football, like,
How how do they do that? But is that not like taking a shelter dog and someone you're teaching to be a trainer and the owner? Like, it sounds like the same game to me.
yeah, I definitely am trying to leverage what I know, the little bit that I know about baseball and prospect recognition, development, and measurement, and all that kind of stuff, and defining questions. That's one of the things that they do really well in sort of what's called, sabermetrics, kind of modern baseball metrics, is defining the question really well. So before you can answer the question, what is the question? Is it the right question? And is it framed in an answerable manner? And then go about answering it. That's something that I think that modern sabermetrics does really well, is defining questions and then proceeding to try and answer them, and then refining it as it goes along. Science is an iterative process where it refines knowledge over time. It's the opposite of sort of tradition, the tradition of dog training. Yeah, I train the way my trainer before me trained, as opposed to what's the optimal way to train? What's the most efficient way to train? What are the important questions? And so, yeah, so trying to pick the right trainers, and then how do you best train them? How do you best get them so that they can do their jobs and thrive?
I mean, you sound just like Bob when they were talking about AVE. And
Ken Norris was one of my early mentors. He's a dolphin guy, but
Yeah.
he's a biologist. And his definition of science is asking questions and making it difficult to lie about the answer. And I think that pretty well fits what you're trying to describe there. So often we try to fudge. We approach science, but at least in the old school, they might begin to detect why animals did things, but then they would make up their own definitions of it. They'd put a label on it, and that's as if it describes it, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so many dog trainers do that. They've got strange names for things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, sort of the moving, the gimmicks, the inability of people to recognize gimmicks in the absence of critical thinking it worries me in society in general, and it worries me specifically in dog training, is the kind of crappy critical thinking skills. I saw an ad the other day. Somebody was trying to advertise, I don't know, course or something, or saying, we have a brand new way to fix reactivity in dogs. So I'm like, okay, brand new. What do you mean by brand new? And so what's the contingency? And they're saying something like, it's none of that old operant conditioning or desensitization and counterconditioning stuff that we know doesn't work. It's like, and I'm thinking to myself, wait, what? I mean, desensitization and counterconditioning and respondent conditioning and operant conditioning work fine over here. Like again and again and again, it's working well, and makes me think, your execution. So if somebody says something which is, we know, if somebody says no, gravity doesn't work, then you got to think about, okay, hang on a second, okay, that's not a true statement. So how's your execution? There must be something that you're doing that's making it not work for you. And they think, well, if you can't execute a well-vetted technique properly and succeed with it, how well are you going to be, how well are you executing your gimmicky thing? It really worries me, the absence of fundamentals. Trainers who claim they don't use operant conditioning. And then if you look at what they're doing, of course, that's what they're doing. They're using, behavior consequence contingencies. And then, which is worse, that they don't know that they're using operant conditioning, or that they're duping people and saying, I've got something new and improved. I do get it that marketing matters, and claiming to have something new and shiny is a good marketing strategy. But if you can't succeed with good fundamental technique, should you be in this business at all? And that's, I think, what Bob sort of brought to the table is, if your fundamentals are no good, it's a house of cards. It doesn't matter how well you can market. It doesn't matter what else you do. You've got to have fundamentals. Otherwise, you're not going to train your way out of a paper box, or a paper bag, or whatever is the expression.
That was so well put. That really was. I mean,
fundamentals matter. There's a pretty startling lack of fundamentals out there still. We're doing our level best, but man, it's tough because nobody wants to recognize that their fundamentals are no good.
Yeah, and is that a marketing thing too? Because I feel like there's more content out there now than there ever was. There's more video, there's more people. I mean, you can find anything you want to find with AI on the internet, but that doesn't mean you have good mechanical skills. That's
right.
Never going to fix that. But yet you have people walking around
right.
thinking they know more.
Fundamentals is everything. I mean, I've seen over the years, and I'm sure you have too, the nutty ideas and the incompetence. Trainers saying, things like prompting is dangerous, or position feeding is dangerous. Literally, that I'm quoting directly, and dead wrong, ass backwards classical conditioning, and like, wow, it's kind of like physicians who flunked gross anatomy and then they're going out into medical practice.
Since you put it that way, yes. I mean, like our numbers haven't gone down at shelters. Dogs are still getting returned at high rates, and there's more trainers out there now than there's ever been.
Right. And owners, resorting to aversive-based trainers and giving up their dogs and medications. I think medications terrific, have their place, but if they're used in place of good technique, ugh.
But it's like you said, where are the checks and balances on if that trainer has the mechanical skills or not?
Right.
Where is that?
I can't tell you how many times I consult with some trainer, and they say, this case is impossible, it's unsolvable, it's this, I need something new, something out of the box, blah, blah, blah. And then you go over the case with them, and it's an execution problem. They're doing something that's not right. It's not the dog. It's not the owner. It's something technical. Mm-hmm. And you fix the technique, and then it falls into place. And these are people who are out there taking money for hire.
Yeah. How do we fix that? Do you have any ideas on that? Like, how do we change the narrative and flip the script? You do have ideas. Ooh, do tell.
Yeah, the Academy for Dog Training. But we can't do it on our own. We can only do something. We can only do so much because we're just like one entity, So how to, get it more widespread. I would hope that trainers, if you're not resolving cases in your dogs, and it seems like you've got this parade of difficult dogs or difficult clients, and they're, and one after the other you're struggling with, go back to bed, get your fundamentals down. There's something with your technique, either, start with good sound theory and then develop your mechanics and then be able to put it all together and then develop your case efficiency. We're not training people who are self-selected trainers. We're generally speaking helping families who just want it fast. So you've got to be fast. You've got to be effective, and you've got to be fast. And so, just make sure that you're not committing fatal mission critical errors in your training before you start thinking it's the dog or the client.
I feel like that's been Bob's message since he started teaching the general public, and maybe even before Bob. But I know he has several lectures where he spends a lot of time comparing the mechanical skills to, like you said, that of a surgeon or a golfer or a mechanic or something. And I don't think there's a person out there that thinks they could become a professional golfer just by watching it on TV and reading a book, or that
Right,
there's a person out there
right.
that would start brain surgery, walk in and think that they could do that. But yet it's very common in dog training. Is that the
Yeah.
messaging we're putting out as the leaders in the industry? Like, how do we fix that messaging?
It's tough because, as you said earlier, there's sort of a social media landscape now and a big void, and there's a lot of demand for content, and that usually means something new, different. Our attention spans are short, and if as I said before, I'm going to harp on this again. If your fundamentals are no good, you can't actually train properly. The new gimmick's not going to fix that. So you've got to be sound. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be fluent at it. Rate, criteria, mechanics. You've got to be able to, write a sound training plan, an efficient training plan, and you've got to know how to change criteria. All of it. If you can't do that, don't glom onto the newest gimmick. Make sure that you don't have big gaps.
Well, there's one other issue here. Training is at once one of the simplest things in the world to do, and at the same time, one of the most challenging things you could ever do. That any trainer can train any animal to do any behavior using any method given enough time. Eventually, most dogs will figure out what is kind of wanted. Now, it might not be perfect, but the animal will figure it out. And
Dogs are forgiving.
that's a real problem. If indeed it were enough like brain surgery that, somebody incompetent doing it, the patient dies. Well, okay, now you start toting up on two columns. Okay, patient lives and patient dies. Now you start balancing the columns. Are there more living patients or are there more dead patients? It's not the case here that you might get some kind of behavior and it might even be a little close, but it took a long, long time. And more often than not, the client, after a while, will get exhausted at this sort of thing and just quit and just, okay, that's what I got. And that's it. That's when the client hires a trainer. Or the client decides, okay, you teach me how to do it. Well, now you have seen that. I mean, you have seen far more of that than I have, of people that get in there and say, I am going to train my dog. Well, that's not going to last all that long. Pretty soon, they're going to get tired of trying to be disciplined. They don't like the idea of this. This is my pet. Well, your pet is biting your kids. Don't you think maybe you ought to do something about it? And that it is difficult to get individual clients to cooperate. Again, you have been through this far more than I have because I have decided I'm not going to devote my life to helping these people overcome their own difficulties. They won't admit that it's their own difficulty. It's not the dog's problem most of the time. Now, we both know that there are some dogs that have,
Occasionally. Yeah.
they've got some neurological problems, but that's just nature's bell curve. That's just the way that it is. But if the owner will not accept the discipline that is necessary, it's like raising a child. There are a lot of parents out there who probably should not be parents because they have not accepted the responsibility of being a parent. I'm just thinking of the evolution that I have seen in my years at this. And most of the time, the only area where I would be in the dog training area would be in military or occasionally in some dog sports, but mostly military or government agencies, that sort of thing. And there, I'm afraid that the trainers most of them had great discipline, but the training was brutal. And that's because they're dealing with 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 years of military training, because remember, these dogs were used for hunting and for the military way back when. Again, I'm talking about 6, 7, 10,000 years ago. And so they were training these dogs to attack people and to do other things, guard dogs. And so they had a technology at the time. The Romans were great at training. They tended to be pretty brutal, but nonetheless, they were, I was going to say great trainers. They could get a lot of behavior with a lot of different kinds of animals, all the elephants and lions and tigers and bears, oh my. The point is that they developed a craft that we, you and I and others are trying to build into a true technology based on science. And it's going to be people like yourself who are really going to pass this on to so many people, hopefully, that that the average pet will get the benefits of what you are teaching. Even if a given person doesn't go to your class, if they learn from somebody that you taught, they are much better likely or more likely to get good training ideas.
I mean, efficiency matters in pet dog training for the very reason that you just described. Owners they want it, they need it, they want it fast. They're not going to generally develop into dog trainers. And so, that puzzle of, okay, so, how do we, take the right technique for the job, and then how do you curate that for an owner who's going to be partially DIYing it? How do we get to an outcome where that dog stays in that family with a good quality of life and everybody's happy? Nobody's kid is getting bitten by some 80-pound predator. How do you get there? And it's such a great puzzle.
I do have a question. I was starting to ask before Bob told that story. So you were talking about, how do you motivate that owner that's going to DIY it and everything? And then you keep you're interested in stats on sports and stuff. Have you thought about gamifying it? Is that what you're after? Is that the angle? Like,
no. Oh, you mean turning it into a game for the owner?
yeah, like something to
Yeah.
motivate them,
Yeah.
to do those repetitions and.
It's tough. One thing that I think we need to recognize is that owners are not going to know they want it all now. So in other words, if you say, okay, here's your training plan, here's how to train, here's some basics of how to do it, off you go, I'll see you in a week. Email me if you've got any questions. And then you come back in a week and they've done some practice, but not very much, but they've done a little. And then they're saying they say it's not working. Okay. And then you've not got it done. Okay, so why is it not working? Is it that they haven't done enough? Is it that they're technically not doing it well? Or is it that it is working and they're not identifying because they want it all. They want it now. They're not very process oriented. They don't know what it's supposed to look like. They're not at the end of the plan yet, so therefore it's not working. And so a good, competent trainer is going to be able to, tease apart which of those is what's going on here. And sometimes it is that the owner doesn't find training interesting. Those of us who sign up for a chicken camp, we would train from dawn till dusk. We like training. Owners don't. They think it's a chore. They're checking their phones in class. They do 1 or 2 repetitions, and then they're like, has he got it yet? They don't want to put in the reps. So how do you get them to do enough? So part of that is a long about way to say part of the reinforcement for them has to come from us. They're not going to find the task of training intrinsically reinforcing. They're not going to find it interesting. They're not going to get instant success to the level that they want. So something's got to keep their behavior of training the dog going. Okay. And therefore we have to be the ones who sort of do that. We prop it up until the outcome and the results start supporting their behavior of training. They say, wow, this is working. We've got to kind of be the support system. So we've got to kind of, fit our way into the gap there and make sure we know what's going on. Why are they claiming it's not working? Is it in fact not working or not? And then, go from there. So that's part of it.
There's wishing and wanting. The word wish and the word want. And to me, the difference between the two is there are lots of wishers out there. The person wishing for their dog not to come charging on the end of the leash, the dog not jumping up on people. They wish the dog didn't do that. Now, that's one person. And then there's the person who wants. And that person is willing to devote the time because they want to have this dog not do that.
Yeah.
And I talk about this in the chicken workshops about the difference between wishing and wanting.
Yeah.
You can wish all you want. That isn't going to
Yeah.
change the thing. If you want to do it, you will
Yeah.
apply
Right.
the discipline. You'll, let's say, present or give the level of effort needed in order to get that behavior that you want because you want the results. You see the results in your eyes and you want that result. It isn't just a matter of wishing it and the genie makes it appear. It's a matter of you're willing to devote the energy, the time. Often it's the time to get that. And I try to explain that to people who are teaching, and sometimes they don't seem to get the difference between wishing and wanting. That what you're looking for is to create a true want, making it worthwhile to get these behaviors that they want.
And that they believe that they can have it. I mean, that they think that it's actually achievable. Because I think in some level, some level in their brain, they think this is never going to happen. It's not happening immediately, so therefore it's never going to happen.
It seems to me, anyway, over the years, more and more dogs have become little people to more and more people. There are so many people who believe that dog really, really understands all the little nuances of every word that you speak, that they actually understand English. And, that's only a slight exaggeration, I would say, that if you have this feeling that this dog is a person that an average person can catch simple things very quickly. And once they start to catch on, they learn the rest of it very rapidly. They finally get the idea. That's the thing is, get the idea. I hear that so much. Get the idea. And I have no idea what sort of ideas dogs get. They learn to master their environment. They learn to behave in a way where they accomplish whatever goals they have within that environment. That's what nature has spent these billions of years on, giving animals, including ourselves, that capability of coping with the environment.
And we can leverage that or ignore it at our peril.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have one more question for you, Jean, there's trainers out there, young trainers that want to know this one. Looking at your generation and what you've done for dog training, what do you think that students don't appreciate, the newer students don't appreciate or fully appreciate what your generation has given the industry?
I mean, I think sometimes the younger trainers, there's a lot of lamenting about the overuse of aversive stimuli. And for sure, it's still out there and it's still done badly and so on. Compared to 40 years ago, holy cow. So I do think that the current generation has advanced the ball vis-a-vis reducing kind of the slavish dependence on aversive stimuli. I do hope that the next generation, that they really can get their heads around the fundamentals, fundamentals, rate criteria, that they have killer mechanics. They know how to do respondent conditioning. They can do that with their eyes closed. They can do it fluently. They can teach it to others. They know how much they need to teach to the dog owning public and how to then get that person to do enough. You curate it all for non-trainers and the dog owning public. So I think, we're trying to advance the ball in that regard, but I think there's a lot of yards left to go.
Well, if anybody's made progress, it's definitely you. And we appreciate everything you've done for the industry. It's amazing I think we had one of your students in a chicken workshop I think last year. She was saying she was going through your school, and I didn't realize it was all online now. And I thought, wow, that's pretty wild that you have made those shift and adjusted with video, and how it's been able you've been able to pinpoint things now for people, and that's amazing. That's great. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I do want to say I've got the opportunity here to just say, Bob, thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for that. But again, I can pass that thanks on to the Brelands and to others. There are others. It wasn't just, well, it was just the Brelands. Now, that I'll say. The Brelands started the whole thing.
Yeah.
But after that, there was let's say, a spread, and that there are relatively few, I'll put it this way, relatively few like yourself who are willing to devote the time to develop the skills and to spread those skills around to lots of other people. And without trying to create all of this so-called new stuff, which is really just an iteration of the old stuff. And with
if it's any good.
If it's any good. You know, I just remember some of the names that came up. Affection training. You ever heard of affection training?
Or relationship training, yeah. I mean, when you talk about sort of like, the ABE, it's like the animal might have multiple trainers, but, but because it's good record keeping, good plans, good mechanics and all that, it didn't matter. Whereas now it's like, no, you got to form a relationship with the dog before you train. You can train without any relationship.
Yeah, well, the relationship you have to have is a good relationship.
Right, and the training's good. The training's going to help develop that. But you don't sort of just magically have to, like build a relationship before you can start training. No, start training now.
No, that's it. And if it's good training, it builds a relationship. Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely got it.
So, Jean, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they find you? Where do they look?
So they can find me at either academyfordogtrainers.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. They go to the great courses. There's a Dog Training 101 course there. So, I'm not hard to find.
Excellent. And I hope people really take advantage of that opportunity and reach out to you and take advantage of the courses, because they are time tested and legendary. I have lots of friends who went through them. And again, I have that one regret from being back there and picking chickens. And so maybe one day when I get a little free time, I will sign up for one of those courses and learn from you, because you
probably know what you're doing.
It's amazing. No, I mean, you can always learn, right? And we can always get better. All of us. Thanks for tuning in to Precision Animal Training. A few key takeaways from Jean Donaldson and Dr. Bob Bailey. The field has moved from tradition and aversives to science, skilled mechanics, and real understanding of behavior. Fundamentals still matter most. Clean mechanics, solid plans, and relentless focus on execution. And great trainers aren't born. They're built through supervision, feedback, and the willingness to keep improving. Passing that commitment forward is how the profession advances. Until next time, stay rigorous, stay humble, and keep sharpening your skills. The animals and their people deserve our best. And as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the Precision Animal Training Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen. It helps spread the word to more trainers like you. Share the show with a friend who could use a behavior breakthrough. Want to dive deeper into precision animal training? Head to kirstenschickenworkshops.com to learn about the workshops, sign up, or join the waitlist for the next series. That's kirstenschickenworkshops.com, where legendary science-based behavioral technology meets tomorrow's top trainers. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, remember, train a chicken, change the way you train forever. This show was edited and produced by Johnny Gwynn at Deep Fried Studios.
Bye.